All right, let's dive right into an explainer that completely redefines what it means to be an entry-level candidate today. Honestly, if you're hiring, if you're building software, or really just paying attention to where the workforce is heading, you absolutely need to understand this fundamental shift that just happened on university campuses. Because we aren't just talking about a new batch of graduates looking for jobs, we are looking at the arrival of a completely new kind of worker.
And we're going to start with a very specific, super small number that actually carries a massive amount of weight for the future of tech. 26. Now, I know it's a tiny fraction of the millions of students graduating globally, but this specific group serves as a literal looking glass into the future of enterprise productivity and software development. So why 26? Well, OpenAI just singled out this exact number of young builders as the inaugural ChatGPT Futures Class of 2026. And understanding exactly why these specific 26 students were chosen is absolutely crucial right now. They aren't just your standard high achievers. They represent a distinct, hard, generational dividing line that is about to hit the corporate world in full force.
Here is the roadmap for today. First up, the class of 2026. Second, what it actually means to be an AI native graduate. Third, young builders as teachers. Fourth, OpenAI's campus strategy. And finally, actionable takeaways for hiring the AI native generation. Let's get right into Section 1, the Class of 2026. Recognizing the inaugural ChatGPT Futures Cohort. So back on May 6, 2026, OpenAI's Leah Belsky announced this really fascinating program honoring creators, explorers, and advocates. And the absolutely crucial point here is that this isn't a scholarship. It's not a financial grant at all. It's a public recognition cohort. OpenAI is essentially planting a flag to publicly say, hey, this is what exemplary, creative, and responsible, or as they put it, deeply human, AI use looks like at this exact moment in history. They aren't just throwing money at a problem. They're actively defining the gold standard for a totally new skill set.
Moving on to Section 2, the first AI native graduates. A precise generational fact.
Think back to fall 2022 for a second. That is when ChatGPT was just beginning to totally reshape the world, and these exact students arrived on campus at that very same moment. So for their entire college career, from 2023 to 2025, they were navigating a total wild west of university improvisation and shifting policies. And now, in May 2026, they're graduating into a workforce where AI is already deeply embedded. They are literally the very first cohort to start and finish their college careers completely parallel to ChatGPT's existence. To really understand their mindset, you have to look at the contrast. The class of 2026 are what we can call the improvisers. They didn't have a syllabus telling them how to prompt. They tested early builds, they broke things, and they literally introduced the tech to their professors way before any rules existed. Then you have future classes, the instituted. These future students are going to walk into universities that already have established AI policies and integrated curricula. So the class of 2026 aren't the pre-AI graduates, but they also aren't the future AI curriculum graduates either. They had to improvise and write the entire playbook in real time.
Which brings us to a term we hear thrown around all the time. But we really need to stop using AI native as a lazy marketing buzzword. For this specific class, it's a literal, precise state of being. Their entire academic formation, I'm talking about how they research, how they structure their writing habits, their fundamental approach to problem solving, it all developed in lockstep with these tools. It's not just a tool they learn to use later on, it's the environment they grew up in professionally.
All right, Section 3, young builders as teachers. The flipped classroom motif.
Listen to how Nolan Wyndham, who is one of the 26 honorees, frames this. He says, the exciting thing is this is just the beginning. Many young people will recognize their place as teachers for society looking to learn to use the technology of the future. Now, Nolan is 23 years old, and he is the head of AI at a prominent hedge fund. Just let that sink in for a second. His quote perfectly captures this monumental shift. These young adopters were actually the ones introducing the technology to their parents, their older siblings, and their professors.
The dynamic has completely flipped. In almost every corporate environment right now, the youngest people in the room, the ones who are traditionally expected to just sit quietly and take notes, are now the seasoned guides for the most transformative technology of the decade. They are instructing the establishment because, quite frankly, they just have way more hours of applied flight time with these systems.
Which leads us to Section 4, OpenAI's campus strategy. Building institutional relationships deliberately.
Stepping back from the students themselves for a minute, let's look at the bigger chessboard and examine OpenAI's corporate strategy here. None of this is happening in a vacuum. Just look at the rapid sequence of events. The Futures Class was announced May 6th. Literally 5 days later, on May 11th, OpenAI launched interest forms for their campus network student clubs, and all of this sits right alongside their ChatGPT for Education product. It's a hugely orchestrated push to cement OpenAI's relationship with academic institutions and establish a dominant presence in education before their competitors can lock them out.
Look at the absolute chaotic landscape these students were dealing with. Back in 2022, universities were frantically banning the tech, while students drove this early underground adoption. By 2023, it shifted to reluctant toleration while students were pushing the boundaries. Then 2024 hits and we saw active integration as students built real, actual workflows. And now, in 2026, as universities are finally getting around to building solid policies, these students are already graduating. While the institutions cycled from panic to policy, these 26 students somehow threaded that chaotic landscape to produce highly meaningful work anyway.
So, Section 5, Hiring the AI Native Generation. What this means for developers and managers. Okay, so let's get practical. How do we actually apply all of this to your daily hiring and product building? Well, if you're hiring, throw the old playbook out. You have to treat AI literacy as a baseline assumption, not some cute bonus credential tucked at the bottom of a resume. You need to recognize that their applied experience includes making mistakes with AI, hitting absolute dead ends, and learning its limits over 4 long years. They possess this applied intuition about where AI genuinely helps and where it just hallucinates and creates a huge mess. It's a baseline you absolutely cannot ignore if you want your teams to be competitive.
And hey, if you're a developer or a product manager, this program is a massive directional hint. The use cases OpenAI chooses to publicly amplify today show exactly where they believe the technology is going tomorrow. By recognizing these 26 young builders, OpenAI is basically putting up a giant neon billboard showing exactly which workflows, which architectures, and which creative applications they want to foster in the broader community.
So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. The improvisers, the ones who totally tamed the early, messy days of generative AI while finishing their degrees, they're graduating right now. They're walking out of the campus gates and stepping right into the talent pool. But the real question isn't whether they're ready for the workforce. The question is your organization actually prepared to put them to work? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.